Perfect.
All right, everybody, what's going on, man? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWACTalk. This is the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells coming at you, and it's time now to start talking about the 2024 schedules. They are slowly being rolled out. We have four that we know of in full. We knew of Bethune-Cookman's schedule last week. We found out Alabama A&M schedule, Grambling schedule, and Southern schedule this week. So I wanted to go through each schedule and look at the games that are being played and share my thoughts on them. I came up with my own little ranking system to kind of show my thoughts on the schedule. I don't want to give them a letter grade. So I just decided to come up with my own little methodology to explain, my thoughts on it on each schedule. So we'll go through that, and we'll do this for every schedule that comes out as they come out. So I just wanted to go ahead and start this here and get the ball rolling. But before we do any of that, as usual, man, y'all check out those socials. Facebook is SWACTalk, Instagram SWACTalk, Twitter SWACTalk76. Also, I am now a paid contributor to bustingbrackets.com, so make sure y'all check me out there. My first article was a preview of the Southern Grambling game coming up this Saturday. Definitely check it out. I got the link in the description. I'm gonna probably drop another article sometime this week coming up after the game. So y'all make sure y'all check me out there. Bustingbrackets.com. The link will be in the description, and you can also catch the link on my socials. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We almost at 1,200 subscribers, so we're making our way up the ladder rapidly. Like the video, share, feel free to comment, hit that join button to become a member, or you can hit the super thanks, or you can donate to the show using the Cash App $SWACTalk. Anything would be appreciated. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start this thing off. And we're going to start off with the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. But before we look at the schedule, I'm going to share my SWACTalk schedule ranking system, or whatever you want to call it. I went through and I awarded points for each level of football that you play against. FCS games I gave them 1 point. G5 games, I gave them 2 points. And Power 5 games, I gave them 3 points. A D2 game, I didn't award any points. And anything below that, Lincoln, Virginia, Lynchburg, all them kind of schools, I gave you a -1. So if anybody have one of them teams on their schedule, you're getting a -1 off rip, because I don't like those games at all. I also wanted to share my thoughts on what a good schedule is to me. In a normal season, I prefer two FCS games, especially at least one HBCU FCS game, and a regional FCS opponent, and maybe a G5 FBS opponent if you have to play one, or a D2 opponent like a SIAC or a CIAA opponent. Those are my favorite types of schedules. If you can't play, another FCS HBCU, then I don't mind 2 regional FCS opponents and an FBS game, or 2 regional FCS opponents and a D2 game if you have one home game already out of those 2 FCS games. With it being a 12-game schedule, that kind of sometimes changes some things up. I am never a fan of multiple FBS games. So whether it's an 11-game schedule, 12-game schedule, I don't like 2 FBS games regardless. So if I'm not going to punish anybody for that, but that's like my least. The only thing I hate worse than 2 FBS games is 2 games against Virginia, Lynchburg, and Lincoln type of games. I don't like those 2. I don't. That's not my style. I don't like that. But I know everybody got to pay their bills in their own way. So some teams have to play money games. So I get it. If you have to play a Power 5 game, I prefer it be a local team. some team you got some kind of connection with, not just going up to Penn State to play them because they cutting a check or whatever. But that's pretty much how I feel about that. I know that with the 12-game schedules, you're going to see a lot of teams play multiple FBS games. Some might play multiple D2 games depending on the situation. So that's how I feel about that. So let's go ahead and start this off with the Bulldogs. I awarded their schedule 12 points because they have a Power 5 game. They have they have their 8 conference opponents, and a regional FCS opponent in Austin P, and then they have two D2 opponents. So they ended up with 12 points on the SWACTalk schedule ranking scale. They opened up their schedule on August 31st at Auburn. September 7th, they play Kentucky State at home. September 14th, they play Fayetteville State at home. September 21st, they go to Austin P. September 28th, they go to Florida A&M. So they have 2 games on the road back to back. October 5th, they go to Mobile to take on Jackson State in the Gulf Coast Challenge. October 12th, they play Bethune-Cookman at home. That's homecoming. They have their traditional bye week before the Magic City Classic on October 19th. On October 26th, they go to Birmingham to take on Alabama State in the Magic City Classic. November 2nd, they get Southern at home. November 9th, they go to Pine Bluff. November 6th, they get Grambling at home. And then they close out their schedule on November 23rd at Mississippi Valley. So, like I said, I'm not, I don't really like the 2 D2 opponents. They played two D2 opponents last season and an SEC team. This season, they worked in an FCS game in the mix. So, I would prefer, switching out one of those D2 opponents with another FCS team. But, you're trying to get home games. So, it is what it is. Not really a fan of those 2 games, but the schedule is not, it's not murderer's row in terms of non-conference. That Austin P game is going to be a challenge as usual, but they do have games that they can win. They need to stack up some wins before they get into conference play because, this could be, a make or break year for Coach Manor. So you want to try to get some wins under your belt, and, you're going to, I guess that's the best way to do it coming off of an SEC opponent. You rack up a couple other victories and go from there. So, like I said, I awarded the Bulldogs 12 points on their schedule due to the 2 D2 opponents. That kind of lowered their score a bit. The next schedule that we have is Bethune-Cookman. The Wildcats, last season they played two FBS opponents. This season they do the same. They have 2. This time they have two G5 opponents. Last season they had a Power 5 opponent and a G5 opponent. This time it's 2 G5 opponents. So I awarded the Wildcats 13 points due to the fact that they do have 2 G2 opponents and 2 G5 opponents, an FCS opponent and a D2 opponent. They open up on August 31st at USF. They get Mercer at home on September 7th. That's a strong home game. Mercer was a playoff team this past season, so that's a nice FCS game at home to open up your schedule. September 14th, they go to Western Michigan. September 21st, they come home for Clark Atlanta. September 28th, they get Alabama State at home. They get a bye week on October 5th. October 12th, they go to Alabama A&M. October 19th, they go to Valley. October 26th, they get Jackson State at home. That's homecoming for the Wildcats. November 2nd, they get Grambling at home. That's a nice little back-to-back homestand. November 9th, they go to Southern. November 16th, they go to Tennessee State. Tennessee State. They go to Texas Southern, excuse me. I'm thinking TSU for some reason. Tennessee State, but that's Texas Southern. It's a conference game, obviously. And the Florida Classic on November 23rd against the Rattlers of Florida A&M. So looking at their schedule, they have a lot of road games. They travel a lot. Like I said, they open up on the road. They do come home for 1, then they go back on the road, come home for 2, then they're on the road for 2, home for 2, and then they finish out this season away from home for the last 3 games. And they have some pretty decent trips in terms of distance. You're going to Western Michigan, you're going to Alabama A&M and Valley back to back. You're going to Southern and Texas Southern back to back. Those are some really tough traveling trips for a team. So they're gonna be on the road quite a bit. They have 4 home games this season. Well, no, they have 5 home games this season. Excuse me, but that Jackson State, Grambling State back-to-back home stand is a pretty solid one in terms of drawing fans to the game. Playing JSU for homecoming is definitely going to pack out your stadium. So it's not a bad schedule. Like I said, I'm not a fan of 2 FBS games anyway, regardless of what team it is. So that kind of in my personal book that knocks it. But in terms of how my point scale goes, it doesn't hurt it at all. And the Clark Atlanta game is a winnable home game to kind of get yourself going for SWAC play. So not a bad schedule. It's kind of kind of tough in terms of traveling. You have you play at most 2 games away from home at a time. You come home for 2 games. So it's kind of balanced out a little bit, but those trips are kind of long and daunting. So we'll see how they handle that once they get into conference play. Our next team on the schedule is Grambling, and Grambling has a pretty solid schedule. The Tigers they ended up with 12 points as well. They have two FCS opponents in the non-conference. Jackson State is a non-conference game for them, and they get Texas A&M Commerce, which is a pretty solid Southland opponent. So that's a nice matchup there. You get Tuskegee from the SIAC, and then you go to ULL, which is a nice regional FBS opponent. Not a long trip for your fans to make. So not a bad schedule for them. And getting a home game early in the season is great for Grambling. Like I said, they open up on August 31st at ULL. September 7th, they open up at home against Tuskegee. September 14th, they're at Texas A&M Commerce. September 21st, they come home for Jackson State. September 28th, they go to Dallas to take on Prairie View in the State Fair Classic. They get a bye week on October 5th. October 12th, they get Alcorn at home. October 19th, they get Pine Bluff at home, which is homecoming. October 26th, they go to Texas Southern. November 2nd, they go to Bethune-Cookman. They get Alabama State at home on the 9th of November. And November 16th, they get Alabama A&M in Huntsville. They get the traditional pre-Bayou Classic bye week on the 23rd. And then on November 30th is the 51st annual Bayou Classic in New Orleans against Southern. So, this schedule, is not that expansive as far as travel goes. You're not leaving the South at all. Your furthest trip is probably going to Huntsville. I guess that's probably your furthest trip. Well, going to Daytona, that's probably your furthest trip. But you're still in the South. That's the SWAC game. So you don't really have a lot of crazy travel. Like I said, you have a couple of regional opponents in the non-conference, and you have a rival in Jackson State in the non-conference. I'm not a fan of playing, SWAC games as non-conference games, but when it's games like that, I understand it. You kind of want to keep those games on the schedule to kind of keep the rotation going for when you pick that game back up in conference play. Like I said, I'm not a fan of it, but I understand it. So it's no big deal to play one of those games a year, not 2 like Southern did last season. I'm not a fan of that at all. But this is a solid schedule. Like I said, ULL is a great opening game for your fan base to attend. Tuskegee is a nice home opponent. Texas A&M Commerce is a new face on your schedule, and then Jackson State is Jackson State. State Fair Classic speaks for itself. So 5 games to open up the season that are really good to look at in terms of engagement with your fan base. A bye week splits the schedule up, and then you get 3 out of your next 6 games are at 3 out of your next 5 games are at home. You get Alcorn at home, Pine Bluff at home, 3 of your next 6 games are at home. You get Alcorn at home, Pine Bluff at home, and then Bama State at home. You go to Texas Southern, Bethune-Cookman, and Alabama A&M before you get the bye week before the Bayou Classic. So the schedule is kind of broken up in the chunks. You have a 5-game stretch, bye week, 6-game stretch, bye week, then a Bayou Classic. So nothing's really egregious. You only have 2 games back to back on the road, so you don't have a lot of back to back weeks traveling. You get to go home, go back on the road, go home, go back on the road. You get a couple games at home, so everything works out in this schedule, and it's a pretty solid schedule. Again, they got 12 points because of a G5 game, two FCS games, and a D2 game. Our final schedule that we have so far, as far as this recording goes, is Southern, and this Southern schedule is worlds better than last season's schedule. Um, you have a couple in-state FCS opponents. You have a rival in Jackson State, and then you have a D2 opponent who you, as far as I know, you haven't played before out of the SIAC. So this is a nice schedule. You open up. I awarded Southern 11 points. They have 11 FCS games. That's 1 point a game, and then that D2 game counts for 0. So they end up with 11 points. You open up at McNeese on August 31st. So on the 31st of August, Grambling and Southern going to basically be in the same area. So you're going to have a lot of SWAC fans in that southwestern Louisiana area. Southern goes to Lake Charles to take on McNeese on the 31st. September 7th is the Pete Richardson Classic against Savannah State, which I like this game for that purpose. I think the Pete Richardson Classic should be a game against an opponent that you typically don't play. Should be maybe, if you're going to play a D2 opponent, that should be that game. Your first game at home should be that game. So I don't mind that game against Savannah State. September 14th, you go to Jackson to take on the Tigers. Again, that's a rivalry game. You're going to keep that anytime it rolls on the schedule. You're probably going to try to keep it on as best as you can. And in a 12-game season, that doesn't hurt anything at all. September 21st, you go to Prairie View. September 28th, you get a bye week. October 5th, you get Nicholls State at home for the first time in umpteen years. If you listen to Swag Smoke, then you know how I feel about this game. I'm not crazy about playing Nicholls State, but it's an FCS opponent. Nicholls State was a playoff team, so it's gonna be a tough affair. You get this game at home to open up the series, so that helps a lot. So October 12th, you go to Texas Southern. October 19th, you get Alcorn at home for homecoming. October 26th, you go to Florida A&M. November 2nd, you go to Alabama A&M. November 9th, you get Bethune-Cookman at home. November 16th, you get Pine Bluff at home. Then you get your bye week before the Bayou Classic. And then November 30th is the 51st annual Bayou Classic in New Orleans against Grambling State. Another schedule that's kind of broke up into chunks. Southern's first 3 of their first 4 games are on the road, so they're gonna be, not crazy distances, but they're gonna be traveling a lot the first few weeks of the season. So you get two non-conference games and a conference game on the road. 2 trips to Texas in like a month span. So that might be an issue for some people having to go to Texas. Almost not really back to back, but almost that in that span. But the later portion of the season, yeah, 2 road games at FAMU and at Alabama A&M. You do get 3. You do get 4 out of your next 4 out of your next 7 games are at home, so you do get a nice stretch of home games. They're kind of broken up, but you do get, you get Nicholls State at home, then you go to Texas Southern, then you get Alcorn at home, then you go back on the road for 2, then you close out your classic portion of your schedule at home before you get that bye week. And playing a game like Pine Bluff before that bye week is, that's always I'm not saying Pine Bluff is going to be an easy game, but, playing a game that's not as challenging, quote unquote, can be good going into that bye week. But this, and then like I said, you close out with a neutral site game. So not a bad schedule for Southern, a lot better than the last couple of years. McNeese is, it's a competitive series. On the last couple of years, these games have been tight. Southern probably should have won the last 2 times that they played McNeese, but they lost them. So they do have the ability to win that game. Which can get your season off to a great start if you were to pull that off. But like I said, it's a nice schedule. I like all FCS opponents, with the exception of Savannah State. I love the fact that they're not playing, Virginia Lynchburg or Lincoln or Florida Memorial. None of those. No disrespect to Florida Memorial because they're putting together a good program, but I'm not really looking forward to playing those kind of games. So you're getting a good idea of what your team has right out the gate, and so that's a pretty solid schedule. I think the McNeese and Nickel State schedule games are both home and homes, so you get that. Jackson State speaks for itself. And then in conference play, you have 3 games on the road in conference play, and 4 games at home and a neutral site game. So you have a good percentage of your conference games are at home, so that helps a lot. Pretty much all you know pretty your most of your Western Division games are going to be on the road this season, as opposed to last season. But I do like the schedule, and I can't say that enough compared to last season. So like I said, Southern gets 11 points for that. And once the rest of the schedules roll out, we'll do this again. I may just do it team by team. If a schedule comes out one day and there's a long gap between the next one, I might just go ahead and drop that one and give my thoughts on it. Or I might just clump them all together and do another, 3 or 4 when they release. But I believe Bama State schedule is supposed to come out on the 23rd, so that definitely will be one of the next ones. I do have a pretty decent idea of Valley's schedule and Pine Bluff's schedule in terms of non-conference. I don't really have their SWAC schedules yet. I know FAMU's playing Norfolk State in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, so that game is spoken for. But other than that, we'll cover these as we get to them. So with that being said, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawell signing out, and I'm gonna catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.